guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Thank you for joining me, guys. Today, I have picked out my top 3 rare champions in every single faction in this game. I did this with Epics a couple weeks ago. A lot of you guys like that. It's a way to talk about a bunch of champions here on the channel that we don't always discuss. So let's go ahead and just jump into it. Try not to make this another 45-minute video. Gonna go move a little bit faster than we did on the Epics. So as I get to these champions, by the way, I will let you know if I would personally 6-star them. Of course, it does depend on your account. Are you free to play? Are you a big spender? Are you early game, mid game, late game? But generally speaking, if we talk about a champion that I list here as my top 3, but it has a rather weak faction, like I had to choose 3 champions after all, I will let you guys know about it. So starting out with Bannerlords, kind of a weak faction, but it does have a really good diamond in the rough in Valerie. So Valerie's super solid. Her A1 is called Swing. Very basic. It doesn't do anything special, and it's called Swing. So her A2 is Energizing Presence. This is her big money ability. It increases the duration of all buffs on allies by 1 turn. Also decreases the duration of all debuffs on allies by 1 turn as well. Also an increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. A very good ability. Decreases debuffs, increases buffs, exactly what you want to have. She's a great support for that unique ability on a rare champion. And then has the Protect on a 5-turn cooldown, which isn't desirable, but it's a great shield buff, guys, right? Plays a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns. The value of the shield depends on this champion's level, and heals each ally according to the number of buffs they are under. So between her shield and, again, that buff extender, that debuff decreaser, she's a really solid rare champion in Valerie. Now, moving on, the next guy here is kind of one of the newer-ish guys. It's Myrmidon. So Myrmidon is an interesting champion, and he is one who I probably wouldn't take to 6 stars. Doesn't mean that he's trash. He's actually, again, in my top 3 here, although Bannerlords is kind of weak. He has a Provoke on his A1, and that is a 40% chance if the target has higher max HP than him. He is defense-based, so he's going to be kind of a tank and a support and a carry. On his A2, he has an AoE decrease attack. So an AoE decrease attack, again, not too bad to have on a 3-turn cooldown. And then in the midst, his A3 has an ally protect for 2 turns and a continuous heal on himself for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. So the idea here is you put him in Provoke gear, or you just try to rely on the Provoke from the A1 in landing, and then he is tanking for the team because the enemies are provoked, and he has that ally protect, mitigating AoE damage or damage in general to all the other all your other allies, excuse me, who are getting attacked. So that is Myrmidon. Again, one of the weaker champions that we're going to be talking about today because Bannerlords is a little bit on the weak side. So Chevalier, I think that's, I just call him Chevalier, Chevalier, but I was watching the correct pronunciation, and it's actually Chevalier. Anyway, guys, sorry, you guys know me. That's not one of my strong suits. Pronunciations, I can't even pronounce pronunciation, has never been one of my strong suits. But either way, he's not a bad champion, okay? He has Void Affinity, attacks 1 enemy 2 times, has a 20% chance of repeating the attack, will ignore block damage and shield buffs. So the cool thing about this champion, right, is that this ability has a 20% chance of repeating the attack every single time. So even if it repeats, you still have another 1 in 5 of it repeating again, and so on and so forth. So you put him in Relentless gear, and you can rattle off like 10 plus A1 attacks where you're having a a block damage and shield buffs. So that's pretty solid. Ignoring block damage, ignoring shield, it hits for around 9-10k, depending obviously on the target, but it can really, snowball because of the 20% of repeating. It's not 20% chance of getting an extra attack that ends. It will just keep repeating and repeating and repeating. And he has a stun here on his A2, 75% chance of landing, not bad. And then on his A3, has an increased defense buff and a continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. Granted, the weak version of both of these buffs, but still a pretty nice support champion to have on your team. Again, probably one that I would not recommend you guys. 6-star, but Bannerlords are kind of slim pickings. So going on to High Elves, how many more names can I butcher in one video? Apothecary. We can get him right. So Apothecary, you guys already know him. A 3-hitter on his A1 at random, has a nice heal that can crit on his A2, and then his A3 is Boon of Speed, the best speed ability from a rare champion in the game, in my opinion. Has a 30% increased speed buff on all allies on a 3-turn cooldown, and then fills a turn meter of all allies by 15%. Has the defense in dungeons by 21%. Great aura as well on Apothecary. Definitely one of the better rare champions inside the entire game. Forget just high elves. So honorable nod, honorable mention to Elaine, but we don't pick Elaine here. We're actually going to go with Eris. So Eris is a really, really solid champion. She's kind of an unsung, like a little bit of an underrated rare champion, and I love her kit. It's simple. Attacks one enemy, grants extra turn if the target is killed. She is an attack-based champion. On the A2, removes one random debuff from all allies. Has a 60%, 100% chance, when booked, of placing that same 30% increased speed that we talked about from Apothecary. So you're going to get that speed buff and removing one debuff from all allies. Sometimes, most of the times, your allies only have one debuff anyway, so it's kind of a pretty serviceable cleanse, plus a speed increase on one ability. Now she has a passive that counterattacks the attacker when an ally is attacked. So she's going to be counterattacking like crazy, right? So using her A1 just constantly and then granting extra turns if the target is killed. It can kind of snowball. There's a nice synergy in her kit. And then she has ally speed in dungeons by 16%. Not too bad for an aura if you're lacking one already on your team. All about speed with Eris, and again, that passive synergy with the A1. And then the last champion that I picked is Reliquary Tender in High Elves. She is, one of the better supports in the rare category, albeit again, a void champion. A little bit more difficult to come by. The Call of Life is a 5-turn cooldown reviver. So revive one ally with 30% HP and fills their turn meter by 30%. Doesn't really stack up against like the legendary reviver champions in the game, but she's rare. Not too bad to have. And then she has remove all debuffs from all allies, and then place a 15% continuous heal buff on them for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. An incredible ability, very, very similar to Bad Elves A2 minus the poisons, but still in -1 continuous heal as well. But still a really, really solid ability, especially on a rare champion. You put that with her revival, and she's a really, really solid, and I wouldn't say she's underrated. I think the word is out on Reliquary Tender, but she's a really solid champion. Let's go ahead and move on to the next category here in Sacred Order. I do feel like we're moving a little bit faster here. Sacred Order is another one that is, well, I don't think it's as weak as Bannerlords. Aethel is going to crack the top 3 here. It's one of the starting champions in the game, but she's good. I mean, she has the weaken on her A1. On the A2, she has the AoE attack, has the extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit. She's attack-based. And then she has the increased attack and the increased defense on this champion for 2 turns if this champion's HP is less than 50%, and then grants the extra turn, which is the huge part of the higher blessing. So she's going to go ahead and grant that extra turn, and then to go back into the Divine Blades. Divine Blades is already on a 3-turn cooldown, so Aethel is a solid champion. She just often kind of gets stuck behind the shadows of the other, like a little bit more powerful starting champions. I'd probably place her last, but doesn't mean she's not bad, just by a hair. What about you guys? How do you rank the starting champions in this game? Let me know. Anyway, moving on, we have Mother Superior. So Mother Superior is a solid support champion. She has a chance at placing a decreased attack on her A1. Solid to have that there. She has an ally heal by 30% of her max HP, and then places a shield buff equal to any surplus heal for 2 turns if the target is fully healed by this skill on a 3-turn cooldown. And then the last is a 7.5 continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns, and then place a shield buff equal to 10% of the target's HP on all allies for 2 turns if that ally's HP is full. So Mother Superior is just a pretty solid support champion. She's not S-tier rare in the game, but you can get by with her, especially in the early to mid game. I'm not sure if I would recommend 6-starring her, but let's see, again, we don't read too much into reviews here on the channel, but people who have her like her. You can see she's being used in kind of early to mid clan boss because of the decreased attack there. Not incredibly reliable at a 35% chance, but still not too bad. So then the next one is going to be one over. Nope. The other redhead. There we go. War Priest. I guess they're all redheads in the Sacred Order. So War Priest is going to be the 3rd. And again, a lot of reviews on War Priest. She's all right. She's another good support champion. very similar in some ways to Mother Superior in that she's a support. She has a lot of heals. So attack one enemy, has a 15, make it 25% chance of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn. Not too bad on an A1. And then heals a target ally by 20% of their max HP. Heals all allies except for the target by 10% of that target's max HP. On a 3-turn cooldown, Divine Light can be a pretty decent AoE heal. We'd rather have that like Mother Superior's where it was based on her max HP rather than all of your allies. But it is what it is. Also has an increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. On a 3-turn cooldown, War Priest is going to be my least favorite of the 3 champions, Aethel and Mother Superior and War Priest, but still, you can get by with her. Very, very, very substantial support champion, again, for mainly the early to mid game inside Raid Shadow Legends. So Barbarians, this is where we get the good stuff here. These are really solid champions, 6-star viable, certainly. So Marked, we talked about quite a bit on the channel before, has a decreased defense on her A1, on the A2, and is an AoE attack with decreased accuracy for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown, and then has a block debuffs buff on all allies for 1 turn, and a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. And that can be booked all the way down to a 3-turn cooldown. That's really, really good to have the block debuffs and the big version of increased defense on all of your allies. She's a really, really good support champion in Marked. I would prefer personally Marked, even though she doesn't have the heal, which you can't really compare it to the, War Priest or Mother Superior, but I would prefer her just kind of in a vacuum as a support champion to anybody that we talked about previously, maybe with the exception of Reliquary Tender, unless you consider Apothecary support. Anyway, let's stop ranking them. Wortman! So Wortman is great. Just like Marked, she has a 3-turn cooldown with a big debuff on it here. Instead of the buff increased defense, it's a decreased defense on her A3. Crumbling Blast attacks all enemies, and it has a 100% chance, when booked, of placing the big version of decreased defense. No other rare champion has a 100% chance of landing the decreased defense on a big version on a 3-turn cooldown. That's why Wortman is so incredibly good, and she is free-to-play friendly. She is farmable in the campaign, I believe on stage 8. The last one here this is a tough one. I gotta give a nod to my man, Ragemonger. He's really solid, but I decided to go with Soulbound Bowyer. You guys know how much I love Soulbound. There's not many champions like her, especially rare champions. An AoE on her A1 makes her campaign farming viable, especially if you're gonna go manual and just AoE every time. And then attacks 1 enemy, has an additional 25% chance of inflicting a critical hit, will ignore 75% of the target's defense. Really hard-hitting ability on a 3-turn cooldown. And then this one has a 75% chance of fully depleting the target's turn meter, 100% chance when it is booked. So the full turn meter depletion takes that enemy out of the battle for a whole turn. And then on top of that, having the the big 75% ignore defense on her A2 makes her a very versatile attack-based single target champion in this game. She's a really solid champ. All right, so let's go on to the Ogrin tribes. So Ogrin, we're getting a little bit worse here, except for Bellower. Bellower is really solid. You guys already know about Bellower, an AoE attack on every single one of his abilities. He has block cooldown skills. He has AoE on his A2, decreased speed, and AoE with a decreased attack and decreased defense on the same ability on a 4-turn cooldown. Granted, it is the weak versions of all of these debuffs in his kit, but the fact that it's 3 AoEs makes him an incredible viable champion to put in a stun set. A lot of people run Bellower in a stun set. I'd recommend you guys go ahead and give it a try too. That way he's not only a debuffer, he has like every debuff in the world in his kit. I joke, but he has a lot, and he could be a stunner, a crowd control champion for you guys. So then next up we have, where are you, man? Okay, CSbreaker. So CSbreaker is one of the newer champions, and I like this dude, man. On his A1, it's pelting blows, attacks 1 enemy 2 times, whatever. On this A2, though, attacks 1 enemy, has a 100% chance when booked on a 2-turn cooldown when booked, of placing a block cooldown skills debuff if the attack is critical. That's really solid. I like the block cooldown skills debuff because for arena, again, we're talking like, gold 1, 2 arena, gold 3, whatever. You can use him to just take any of the opponents immediately out of the battle, right out the gate with this A2. And then on the A3, Heavenly Roar has an increased crit rate on this champion for 2 turns, then attacks all enemies after that buff. So it's an AoE attack, has a 50% chance, make that 75% chance when booked, of reducing turn meter by 30%. I love this, man. I love this ability. You can reduce turn meter on an AoE on the A3. I can't speak today, huh? I can really barely ever speak any day. And then the block cooldown skills on the A2. I like this champion. I really do. All right, Fury Stoker, another newish champion, and boy, is he a male or a female? Do I want to know? Anyway, he's a dude. I'm gonna call him a dude. He's pretty cool too, though. Attacks one enemy, 15% chance of placing an extra hit on the A1. I like those abilities where you have the chance of placing an extra hit. Check this out. He only has 2 active abilities and 1 passive. Remove all debuffs from a target ally. Heals that target by 20%. The heal increases according to the number of debuffs removed. So it's a really powerful heal and a cleanser on one of your allies. And that's it, man. That's his whole kit, except for his passive. His passive is every turn he will heal the ally with the lowest HP by 7.5%, and this heal can be critical. It will not heal himself. So again, this is a guy, I want to be very clear here, guys, not a 6-star viable champion. There are better support healers out there, but I thought he had a pretty unique kit. I like that he heals automatically your ally with the lowest HP every single turn, just kind of keep them alive, and then he can go to his 3-turn heal where it'll remove the debuffs and heal them by 20%, which scales depending on how many debuffs were removed. So I'm a big fan of Fury Stoker, or at least I'm a semi-fan. And by the way, on Fury Stoker, where are you? He has pretty decent stats here, you know, decently high defense, and his speed is pretty good at 100 for a rare champion. Let's go ahead and move on here to Lizardmen. Lizardmen a little bit, they're actually not too bad. We have Haruspex. So Haruspex is probably my favorite Lizardman rare champion. He is Void Affinity. He has a speed in the arena by 15%. Probably have a better speed aura out there in your collection, but still it's not bad. You love speed auras in the arena, obviously. Has a poison here on his A1. And then on his A2, fills the turn meter of all allies by 15% and places a 15% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns. Again, not too bad. This is on a 3-turn cooldown, so it's not as good as Apothecary's ability, but the rest of his kit is unique. It has a revival, too, on his A3 on a 5-turn cooldown. Revives a dead ally with 30% HP, and then fills their turn meter by 30%. So again, Haruspex, you get that turn meter, you get the revival. We're talking Reliquary Tender, right? And he doesn't have the cleanse like she does, but it's kind of like has a little bit of the best of Reliquary Tender mixed with a little bit of Apothecary. So Haruspex is definitely a solid champion for sure. And then next we have this Metal Shaper, guys. I've talked about Metal Shaper before on the channel. He's really unique, right? He has a chance of stealing a buff on his A1, whatever. Damage based on defense on this champion. But check this out, guys. Plays a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns. The value of the shield is proportional to this champion's level, whatever. But it's on a 2-turn cooldown. So you can always get that shield up. He's a cool champion in the fact that he's always constantly shielding up your allies, and you can build him with high HP and put a shield set on him too, and those shields will stack. Shields from the ability and shields from the shield set will stack. You can make this dude just like a shield monster, keeping your entire team alive, and then removes all debuffs from an ally with the lowest HP, then heals this ally by 20% of this champion's max HP. Plays an increased defense, weak version, on the target for 3 turns on a 4-turn cooldown on the rescue ability. Again, you can see the synergy with the shield set, right? Builds him up with a very high HP, and you're placing a great shield based on his HP, and then you'll have the heal based on his HP. That is Metal Shaper. And then the last guy that I want to go with here is, where is he? Bogwalker. So Bogwalker is a clan boss specialist, but he deserves a nod for that reason. He can help you out up till like brutal clan boss. Attacks 1 enemy, has a decreased attack, the big version on the A1, exactly what you want from a clan boss debuffer, and then has a attack all enemies, plays a 30% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. You can see one of the most important buffs, increased defense, and one of the most important debuffs in the decrease attack in his kit. Also has a reflect damage buff on all allies for 1 turn when attacked with a critical hit on a 3-turn cooldown. So again, you can see how the scout ability, everything really, the combo attack and the bone caters is all a great makes for a great kit for him as a support in dungeons, but specifically for clan boss. He does have the ally HP in dungeons by 25%, but again, really, he's not, you're not really going to be running him a ton of dungeons. He's really a clan boss specialist. Next up, I almost stopped talking like I was going to cut, but we're not cutting in this video. All right, Skinwalkers up next. So Skinwalkers, we went with, first is Graybeard. So Graybeard, on his A1, has the Provoke. Not bad, 75% chance at landing that Provoke on the A1. And then it has an AoE that has a 40% chance when booked on a 3-turn cooldown, of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn. Damage inflicted is proportional to defense. So this is actually a pretty solid CC ability here from Graybeard. The fact that he does have that Provoke on the A1 and then the freeze chance on the A2 on a 3-turn cooldown on an AoE makes him very unique as a capable crowd-controlled champion in the rare category. And then has a shield buff on this champion for 2 turns, has a 100% chance when booked again on a 4-turn cooldown of placing a counterattack buff on this champion as well. Now again, the cool thing is the value of the shield is proportional to defense. That's cool. Buff cannot be removed. That's cool too. And then again, the counterattack is going to be having that chance of landing the Provoke every time you use it because the Provoke is on the A1. So again, nice synergy in his kit. He also has an allied defense in dungeons by 30%. Really, really great aura from Graybeard here. Definitely a solid champion. And then a Fleshmonger. Fleshmonger is another kind of one of the newer champions. He came out with Frozen Banshee 3 months ago or so. And he has a pretty decent kit. Attacks 1 enemy 3 times on the A1. Has an increased attack and increased crit rate on him for 2 turns, but then grants him an extra turn. And then his A3 is an AoE that has a 75% chance at placing the big version of decreased defense. So we talked about Wortman being the only champion in the rare category with the big version of decreased defense on an AoE on a 3-turn. Well, we're not all the way there with Tornado Cleaver, but we're in the same ballpark, I guess, right? On a 4-turn cooldown, if this is a 3-turn cooldown, Fleshmonger would be a beast because I think that 75% chance is not too bad given the rest of his kit is pretty solid. He has the extra turn there, so he's going to be kind of cranking out the fresh meat ability, getting him, getting the other abilities on a lesser cooldown, and then just going again from his A1 to his A3. Definitely not a champion that I would recommend investing heavily into, but what is up with the hands necklace? What is up with that? But anyway, then we have, let's see, Grappler here. Grappler is a Spirit Affinity champion. He is a clan boss specialist as well. He has the weaken on his A1. On his A2, he has the poison. And then on the A3, he has a shield buff on all allies equal to 20% of their HP and a reflect damage buff, the strong version on all allies for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. So again, has that poison there. Granted, it is the weak version of poison. 3-turn cooldown, not too bad. Each hit has a 75% chance of landing that poison. And then again, having that weaken on the A1. Grappler is good for early clan boss. Again, not a champion. I'm trying to point out these champions that I wouldn't particularly advise you guys 6-star, as we go through them. So Grappler is one of those champions I probably wouldn't invest heavily because his value kind of dissipates as you go into the end game. But there are slim pickings here in Skinwalker's category. So in Demon Spawn, or actually Orcs, I take it back, we have, well, Gaelic. Oh, not Ultimate Gaelic. Easy there, Ash. Gaelic. So Gaelic is the hardest hitting of all the starting champions in the game, and he does make the cut here in terms of the top 3 orcs in the rare category. Has attack enemy 2 times. On his A2, he has an AoE attack that has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a crit, and then has the increased speed on this champion for 2 turns. On a 3-turn cooldown, really solid ability, and then Cursed Blade attacks 4 times at random. each has a 30% chance of placing a 30% decreased defense, debuff for 2 turns, and then also has a 40% chance when booked of placing a decreased defense for 2 turns if the target has more than 2 debuffs, the strong version of decreased defense. You guys know Gaelic's kit. I don't have to spend too much time on it, just like all the starting champions. He has a plus 15% ally HP in all battles as his aura. Next up we have Treefeller. So Treefeller is, again, Orc, Force Affinity. Attacks one enemy, has a 35, make it 50% chance when booked of placing a decreased accuracy. Okay, whatever. On the A2, each hit has a 50% chance of placing a weak version of poison for 2 turns. Each hit has a 50% chance of placing a 15% decreased speed for 2 turns. Again, nothing to write home about here with the weak version of poison and decreased speed. But really, she is a bomb placer. That's why we like Treefeller, right? She's one of the only rares, there's a few of them, but she's one of the rares that has attack 2 times at random. Each hit has a 100% chance of placing a bomb debuff that detonates after 3 turns. So she's a reliable bomb placer on a 4-turn cooldown, but you can place 2 bombs there. So again, Treefeller, not a 6-star viable champion in my opinion, but she's pretty good for the early game. Now, Veteran is 6-star viable champion. He is on his A1, damage, all of his damage based on defense, by the way, guys. But on his A1, has a chance of placing the decreased attack for 2 turns. On the A2, has an increased crit rate buff on all allies for 3 turns if the target is killed, whatever. But it is a 1 enemy target hit, does hit pretty hard. Massacre, attacks all enemies, 3-turn cooldown, has a 60% chance of placing a block buffs debuff for 1 turn, and damage increases according to this champion's max HP. So the Massacre ability on an AoE can actually hit pretty hard. So again, you want to build him up with a bunch of defense. He has a pretty solid base defense for a rare champion at 1321, and then again, according to his max HP, so you're scaling HP, defense, and this guy can hit pretty hard with that Massacre ability. Again, on a 3-turn cooldown, which is what you look for. It also has a speed aura in dungeons by 15%. So there we go. That is Veteran Treefeller in Gaelic in the Orcs category. Now we can move on to Demon Spawn, making our way through the list here, guys. Gonna start out with, not a lure. Why do I keep going to Epics? Diabolist. So Diabolist is a support champion. She's all about the speed, right? She has a 10% chance to make it 20 when booked to placing a speed debuff. Whatever. AoE. Attacks all enemies on a 3-turn cooldown, and then places a 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 3 turns. Nice to have the big version of increased speed on an AoE attack on the Electric Storm ability. Her damage is based on attack, and her attack scales all right. She's not like a big nuker, but she can deal decent, respectable damage, right? Fills the turn meter of all allies by 15%, and then decreases the turn meter of all enemies by 15% as well on a 4-turn cooldown when booked. So again, all about the speed, the turn meter, a little bit of just helping your team by speeding them up, and also a little mini Lysandra ability in the A3 where she has the decreased turn meter and the increased turn meter of allies and enemies as well. So then the next one here is going to be, not Hellfang, is going to be, there we go, Fellhound. Fellhound, you guys know about Hellhound. He's one of the best campaign farmers in the game. Attacks all enemies here on his A1. You can breeze through campaign farm in 5-6 seconds. Has a continuous heal, reflect damage, makes him ideal for Fire Knight on a 2-turn cooldown. Really, really solid there. Also has a block damage buff on any ally for 1 turn in Fellhound. So really solid there. And then has a defense and faction crypts for his aura. And then the last but not least is going to be Marquess. So Marquess, not to be confused with there's like Marquise and Marquise, not Marquise, but Marquess. Okay, so Marquess on her A1 attacks 1 enemy, decrease attack. Damage based on defense, defensive based champion. Attacks all enemies, damage based on defense, of course, on a 3-turn cooldown. Has a 35% chance, make it 50% chance of placing that weaken for 2 turns. And then deals extra damage to enemies with that weaken debuff. So not bad. Having an AoE weaken is solid. And then has a rare champion on a 4-turn cooldown that has a 100% chance when booked of landing the freeze debuff for 1 turn. So Freeze adds some CC to her kit, also having the weaken on an AoE, and then having the decrease attack on her A1 makes her an all-around good kind of support slash defensive based champion in the game. And again, a faction crypts aura, so kind of whatever on that. So those are my top 3 for Demon Spawn. So moving on to Undead Horde, guys, there's plenty of great champions to choose from. I went with 2 of the newer champions here in Seducer. So Seducer is pretty good because he has a sleep on his A1, kind of a whatever, damage based on defense. You build him out with a lot of defense, has an AoE attack, has a decrease attack on his A2 on a 3-turn cooldown, not bad. It's the weak version of all of these buffs and debuffs, has a 30% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns, and a block debuffs buff on all allies for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. This is a really nice defensive ability, support ability here on his A3. His A4 is only available when Temptress is on the same team, but either way, Seducer is definitely a very capable kind of support and again, defensive-based champion. Frozen Banshee. Frozen Banshee, one of the new champions. Both of these champions are going to be one of the new ones. She has the poison sensitivity debuff. So places a 25% poison sensitivity debuff. That means that for every tick of your 5% poisons on Clan Boss, instead of 50k, they're going to be 62k per tick. Definitely adds up through the duration of the battle. A lot of people run Frozen Banshee now in Clan Boss, even in Ultra Nightmare, myself included. Attacks 1 enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 100% chance of being placed if the target is under that poison sensitivity when booked. So she's going to be placing 2 poisons after she lands that poison sensitivity, so she can put out just an insane amount of damage. It's really a crazy amount of damage. You'll be impressed by Frozen Banshee. I did a champion guide on her if you want to check it out. Grave Chill Killer pairs very well with Frozen Banshee, another one of the kind of newish champions added to the game. Has a 50% chance of landing a strong version of poison on the A1, on the A2, has a decreased defense, can be the strong version of decreased defense, which is really good. A lot of people include Frozen Banshee and Grave Chill Killer on the unkillable comps because you can get the extra poisons in from Grave Chill and land the big version of decreased defense if the target is under a poison debuff, which he pretty much always will. The Clan Boss, that is. And then Icy Veins plays a 5% poison debuff instead of the weak version if the target is under that poison sensitivity, again, from Frozen Banshee, and that is on a 3-turn cooldown as well. So really great synergy between these 2 champions. They're often used in tandem. Moving into Dark Elves, we have Kale. You know Kale. Do I have to mention anything about Kale? He has the poison, the weak version of poison on his A1, the strong version 4 times 50% on his A3, and then the strong AoE fills the turn meter of this champion by 25% for each enemy killed on the Acid Rain 3-turn cooldown. Kale definitely, or I shouldn't say definitely, but my favorite of all the starting champions in this game. I just did a guide on Painkeeper. Painkeeper yesterday, really solid champion, fills his turn mirror by 10% on the A1, attacks all enemies and heals all allies by 15% of her max HP. I'm going to say it because I said it 20 times in yesterday's video. Put her in a shield set, build her out with a ton of HP, and she is an insane carry, and then she's known for her combat tactics, decreases the cooldowns of all ally skills by 1 turn. Really solid ability, beautiful kit on Painkeeper. And then last I have, of course, obviously, Coldheart. Coldheart, one of the heaviest hitting champions with a full turn meter depletion on the A3, her Heartseeker ability. Now let's go ahead and move into Night Revenant. We're getting down the home stretch here, guys. Hey, shout out to Executioner. He's not that bad, actually, guys, but he's not one of my top 3. Coffin Smasher, however, is. Coffin Smasher is a clan boss specialist. Decrease attack on his A1, very simple. Attacks 1 enemy, has a, 50, 60, 75% chance of placing an HP burn on his A2, and then decreases the damage enemies inflict with AoE attacks by 5%. Doesn't sound like much, but again, having that reduction of AoE damage plus the HP burn on a 4-turn cooldown is not too bad for Coffin Smasher. And next up we have Crimson Slayer. So Crimson Slayer here, guys, is a really solid champion, 3 times at random on the A1. By the way, Coffin Smasher, probably wouldn't 6-star him. He's good for early and mid-level clan boss, but really above Brutal, you're going to want to, you know, upgrade to like a Sepulture Sentinel or something like that. Attacks 3 times at random, has a chance of placing Sleep on the A1. Attacks 1 enemy, 70% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 50%. And then fills this champion's turn meter equal to the amount of the target's loss. I love abilities like this, kind of like the Man-Eater Siphon ability, although it's only a 50%, but still, I love the Flowing Sword ability. And then an AoE attacks all enemies, has an 80% chance, make it a 100% chance of placing a heal reduction debuff for 1 turn. Crimson Slayer, another champion that I would not advise you guys to 6-star, because she's going to have limited returns as you progress in this game. And then last, we have Renegade here. Renegade is probably 6-star viable, depending. She's kind of a niche champion, though. So Renegade on her A1 attacks 1 enemy, heal reduction. It scales off of attack and speed, kind of noteworthy here. On her A2, has the decreased speed and the decreased accuracy, and it kind of scales depending on, well, let's just read it. Attacks 3 times at random, 50% chance of placing the decreased speed, plays a decreased accuracy debuff for 2 turns if the target has any active buffs. And then her A3 is where it's really at with Renegade, right? So on a 5-turn cooldown, decreases the cooldown of all ally skills by 2 turns. This skill does not affect her or other champions with this skill. This champion will receive damage equal to 30% of their max HP, and this will happen even if it kills the champion. But Sacrificial Ritual is really good. We talked about Painkeeper's Combat Tactics A3, and this is very similar. It does sacrifice some of her HP, but still the Renegade ability allows you to do some really special things in terms of some kind of like Spider Den or kind of unkillable comps. So again, very, very niche, but very cool and unique in that regard as well. And then last here we have the dwarfs, and that's it, guys. So dwarfs, I'm going with Rune Order. Rune Order, another niche champion for Fire Knight. In my opinion, he's a Fire Knight specialist, 2-timer on his A1. Attacks 1 enemy 2 times on the A2. Also has the decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. And then has a reflect damage and a continuous heal on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. The strong version of reflect damage that will knock and do damage, or I should say, knock away turns off of the shield of the Fire Knight. That's why I wanted to give Rune Order a nod here. Definitely a niche champion, again, a specialist. But if you need him, if you need that reflect, if you don't have, you know, a Skull Crusher, go ahead and use him for Fire Knights. And then Master Butcher. Not a 6-star champion, I don't think. I don't have him built out, but he's kind of one of the newer champions as well. Kind of a weird look to this dude, but he's got a cool kit, right? So attacks 1 enemy, has a 30% chance of placing a Provoke on his A1. On the A2, places a Provoke debuff on the target enemy for 2 turns, 100% chance of landing. On a 4-turn cooldown, though. Places an increased crit rate buff on all allies, and then places an increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. But then his passives are cool. When attacked, heals all allies equal to the amount of damage taken. Doesn't work on bosses, but that is on a 1-turn cooldown when booked. Every time he's attacked, he'll heal all the allies based on that amount of damage. That's a pretty cool passive. And then revives a random ally with full HP when he's killed. Pretty cool, right? Am I right here? This is the first time I actually sat down and took a look at Master Butcher, and I was like, man, this guy is pretty solid. So then we have Bulwark is our last champion, and he is really solid for clan boss, as you guys can see, because he has the weaken on his A1, damage based on defense, but then he has the HP burn on his A2, but his passive is when attacked, has a 30% chance of extending the duration of all debuffs on the target by 1 turn. That's really, really solid for clan boss, extending all of the debuffs, the poisons, the decreased attack, the decreased defense. So Bulwark is definitely a really solid champion in that regard for clan boss. Also has allied defense in all battles by 17%, so you don't have a better defensive aura at hand, go ahead and run him in lead as, you know, one of my top 3 dwarfs, and he is 6-star viable. So there you go, guys. Which champions did I leave off the list? What champions did I snub? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching all the way till the end. I appreciate you guys, and as always, take care, guys.